Thank you. So you are students, you are most welcome to our first class. I hope everyone is hearing me loud and clear. Okay, someone just to let me know that you are hearing me, everyone.
Yeah, we are getting you.
Yes.
We are there.
Thank you very much. My name is Dr. Namoobe. As you can see on the screen, I'm an agronomist and a soil scientist. I'm from Zambia, and currently I'm lecturing at a university college here in Zambia. I'm also head of department crop science, as well as basic sciences. So friends, I'll be taking you in AE 105 and AE 106, as well as AE 107. I hope by this time now we have known the courses or the modules whose codes I've just mentioned. So AE 105 is sustainable agriculture. AE 106 is good agricultural practices or agricultural practices, and AE 107 is soil and water. Before we can start today's lesson, that is sustainable agriculture, I would like to welcome you all to this class.
Thank you.
But before we can start learning, I would like to mention some of my expectations from this class. One, I expect that there will be cooperation. Yes, Lawrence? You are raising your hand, yes, Lawrence?
Okay, I was just saying that thank you for welcoming all of us.
Thank you. Welcome. So as I was saying, I have some expectations for this class. The first one is cooperation. I expect that we are going to cooperate as we do the learning. I expect you to work hard, because you know that if you don't work hard, then whatever you're trying to do is going to be a failure, right? So make sure that you work very hard, be punctual for the class, okay? Here I must apologize that we delayed the class a little bit because there are some problems in connectivity.
Good.
But thank God we have managed to get connected, hence the continuation of the class. So I expect all of you to be very punctual. Okay. For this week, our classes will be beginning at 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock there, right? Our classes will be beginning at 1 o'clock there. So I would expect everyone to be ready by that time. Then the other thing that I expect from you is seriousness. I expect that everyone will be serious, eh? Because if you are not serious, then there will be no cooperation, there will be no hard work, there will be no punctuality. So I would expect that everyone is serious and committed. When someone tries to give an opinion, when there will be a question and answer time, please respect others. Eh? You have to respect their opinions. Having said that, I also expect that each and every one of you will be free. feel free, feel happy that you are in this class. So you should be free to ask any question that is related to the material that we'll be handling at that time. When you are not clear, please raise up your hand or send a message, ask your question so that we can go back to whatever we'll have discussed. So feel free and you are most welcome. So today's lesson, today's module is Sustainable Agriculture, AE 105. Does anyone have an idea of what sustainable agriculture is, if I may ask you? Is there anyone with an idea what sustainable agriculture is? Okay, if we are all quiet, yes.
Yes, sir.
Winnie. Yes. What is sustainable agriculture?
Sustainable agriculture.
Yes, please.
That's the farming for basic human food and fiber needs.
Okay, so it's a farming for basic needs. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, for basic needs.
Yeah.
Another?
Another one, sir.
Yes, please.
Hello.
Yes. Yes, Winnie.
It is a type of agriculture.
Yes, type of agriculture
that focuses on producing long-term crops and livestock while having minimum effect on the environment.
Okay, that's very good. And there was one called Milka. You also want to add? Okay. Now, before we look at sustainable agriculture, I want us to look at agriculture. What is it? Agriculture is simply a science and an art of cultivating the soil. You can see here on the pictures, we have the first one is about cultivating the soil. And then there's also growing and harvesting of crops and raising livestock. So agriculture is simply a science of cultivating the soil, growing and harvesting crops, as well as raising livestock. Okay. And as others, Winnie has said there, sustainable agriculture means a farming system that is capable of maintaining its productivity, okay, and usefulness to society indefinitely. It is the production, the agricultural production that can be maintained without harming the environment. So sustainable agriculture is that agriculture that is capable of productivity, maintaining productivity and usefulness to society indefinitely, and it does not harm the environment. So these are some other definitions that I have there for you. It's a system of cultivating crops and does not impair the manure or humus content of the soil and water. So we are saying that when we are looking at sustainable agriculture, we take care of soil fertility. We manage the soil because it is this soil that we are going to use to grow crops, as well as managing the water, because we need this water for sometimes irrigating crops. And therefore, if we need the soil, we have to manage this soil properly, maintain its fertility. We have to manage the water. And therefore, it calls for the judicious use of soil and water so that these are replenished now and then. For example, if you are growing a crop and the soil tends to lose its fertility, one needs to replace the fertility through different means, like using manure. Okay. So we also can say that sustainable agriculture is a food system. It doesn't require chemicals, but conserves energy and water. It emphasizes on local production, decreases on external inputs, and uses available resources efficiently. It values biodiversity and ecology, and works within our global natural resource limitations. In other words, what are we saying here? We are saying here that as we grow our crops, raise our animals, as we do our agricultural production, in most cases, we have to emphasize on using what we may call internal inputs of agriculture than relying on the inputs of agriculture that is coming from outside, like chemicals. Okay. Now, there are certain principles of sustainable agriculture, and I think these are very important to note. In order for agriculture to be truly sustainable, there are certain principles that have to be followed. The first one is the needs of people. That people have to be provided with rich food, with their families, communities, as well as to maintain their good health, or improving the quality of life in rural areas. So this is a very important principle that needs of people have to be considered. So sustainable agriculture does consider the needs of people. And firstly, any individual
Dr. Namoobe,
to
sorry
be a
for
good
disturbing you.
farmer, you need to be healthy.
Hello?
So the health of these individuals, the health of farmers has to be considered.
Hello,
And
Dr. Namoobe.
the health primarily has to come from the type of food that is provided to these farmers, as well as their families, communities. The other one, the second principle is profit making. You know, farming is a business. And when one wants to start a business, their sole aim is to make profit. You cannot start a business with an aim to make a loss. I think that is not the way we do things. So, as I said, the second principle is profit. So a farming operation must be profitable. Otherwise, if it is not profitable, it is not worthy going into. If you are doing practicing farming and you are taking it as a business, you have to make sure that you are able to make a profit. Otherwise, you go out of that business. In any business that you are doing, if you are making losses, why are you continuing that business? The other principle is the environment. That the farming practices that are followed should be ecologically sound, promoting the health, biodiversity, and the sensible management of the natural resources. So sustainable agriculture will try by all means to have a healthy environment. Sustainable agriculture does not pollute the environment. And here, when we talk about the environment, we are talking about everything that you are going to use when you are producing a crop or you are raising animals. For instance, the soil. How is the soil? Is the soil polluted? How do you take care of the soil? We just talked about soil fertility management. How are you managing the soil? Okay, how are you feeding the soil? Now, when we talk about feeding the soil, what type of manure are you using? What type of nutrients are you using? Are you using what we call external inputs? or those on-farm imports, such as crow manure, animal manure, compost manure? Or are you using different chemicals, synthetic chemicals, or synthetic fertilizers like those that you get from outside, from agricultural shops or agricultural dealers? So how do you take care of the soil environment? We also talked about irrigation water. How do you take care of the irrigation water? Is the water that you use to irrigate your crops, is it polluted? Is it adulterated? Is it clean water? Is it water that has good quality? So all those are very important to consider. So there are three principles there. The needs of people have to be considered first. Then take agriculture as a business, as well as taking care of the environment. The other things that we notice about sustainable agriculture is that it does reduce agricultural runoff. When you are practicing sustainable agriculture, we try by all means that we reduce soil erosion. And when soil erosion is reduced, for instance, then you are going to keep your soil on which you are going to grow your crops. The other one is preventing pollution of lakes and rivers, saving water. The fourth one, as I said, maintaining soil fertility. That is by recycling nutrients on the farm. Now, there are so many nutrients that you get on the farm, okay? Such as organic manure, the compost manure. How do you use them? If you are keeping livestock, do you use the manure from livestock for your crops, or just throw it away? Composting. Everything that is found on the farm has to be recycled instead of being wasted. And that is one of the things that sustainable agriculture tends to achieve. The other one is enhancing carbon sequestration by soils and perennial vegetation. Now, what are we talking about here? When you talk about carbon sequestration, you have heard of climate change. Okay, maybe can someone just remind us what climate change is about? What is climate change? Okay, now climate change is a result of greenhouse gases. We know that in some parts of, especially Africa, maybe in Kenya, here in Zambia, you find that the rainfall pattern, there is weather change, okay, due to the climate change. And this is the result of greenhouse gases that are there in the atmosphere. Now, when you have vegetation, you know, crops, especially, these are sinks. And during the process of photosynthesis, there is need for carbon dioxide to manufacture carbohydrates by these plants. And therefore, this carbon dioxide is one of the greenhouse gases that is found. Lawrence. Yes, Lawrence. Yes, please.
Okay, I'm asking that can climate change affect sustainable agriculture?
Yes, it can affect sustainable agriculture in that you see, when there's a climate change, it means that, for example, maybe in your part of the region, you do not have enough water because you may not have received enough rains that particular year due to climate change. Okay?
Yes.
And therefore, you find that the way you may do your agriculture may not be successful. So, yes, climate change will affect sustainable agriculture. Actually, sustainable agriculture is simply agriculture, but it is that type of agriculture that is done differently. Okay, as we shall see shortly, maybe next week, we may even start talking about climate smart agriculture. Okay, in the event of climate change, which is part of sustainable agriculture, yes. So I was just talking about point number 5 there, enhancing carbon sequestration by soils and the vegetation. Okay, I was saying that when you have vegetation there, these plants, the crops will need carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide being one of the greenhouse gases. These crops will take this carbon dioxide to manufacture their own food through the process of photosynthesis. Their point is decreasing emissions of air pollutants and greenhouse gases, as we already said, and also promoting biodiversity, creating habitats for pollinators and beneficial insects. You know, as we strive to practice sustainable agriculture, one of the things that is encouraged is not to cut trees and forests indiscriminately. We need to keep these, because it is from these forests, trees, and so on, where we get beneficial insects, some of which are pollinators. And sustainable agriculture strives to try to encourage biodiversity. Some of the goals of sustainable agriculture is nutrient cycling, as I said, where some of those nutrients that are found on farm, those nutrients that are found on your farm, such as organic manure, maybe crow manure, any manure that comes from livestock, can be maybe you are rearing chickens, you are rearing some goats there, you are rearing some pigs, you are rearing some cattle. All these manures that are obtained from such livestock, okay, you don't need to throw it away. You need to keep it and use it on your farm. Similarly, sustainable agriculture does promote nitrogen fixation. Now, this nitrogen fixation here that is encouraged is the use of legumes. But there are those leguminous plants, such as beans, okay? Kajanas kajan, Sesbania sesban. There are so many leguminous plants that may be used on the farm, okay? So that they help to fix nitrogen. As you know, nitrogen is one of very important nutrients that is required for plant growth, okay? So sustainable agriculture does encourage that there is what we may call biological nitrogen fixation on your farm through the use of these some of these legume plants. The other thing that we notice here is that there should be pest-predator relationship. I've already said that sustainable agriculture does encourage biodiversity on the farm. It is not every insect that is a nuisance on your farm. So sustainable agriculture, through preservation of some of these forests around your farm, okay, we'll try to, these forests, okay, these habitation places for some of insects. And some
Bluetooth mode.
and may not be pests, and they may not attack your help to predate. They may, that may be in your field. Okay. Encourage or reduce the use of in agriculture and the consumer. Then the other thing is that sustainable agriculture, one of the goals is that participation of farmers and rural communities in all processes of problem analysis, technology development and adaptation and extension, monitoring and evaluation is encouraged. These are where I'm just skipping. We have already talked about this. We have already talked about this. Okay. Yeah. Maybe the other thing that I want to mention here is that sustainable agriculture tends to integrate three main goals. You remember we just talked about the goals of sustainable agriculture. One of the things that it tends to promote is environmental health. That the environment should be very healthy. The other one is economic profitability. We just talked about agriculture as a business. And when you are practicing agriculture, actually you have to take it seriously and take it as a business. And the aim in business is to make a profit. Then the other thing is social and economic equity, that people should be considered when you are practicing agriculture. Now, how may we achieve sustainable agriculture? There are different strategies that may be undertaken, okay, for us to achieve sustainable agriculture. And one of these is mixed farming, mixed cropping, crop rotation, crop selection, and varietal improvements. I hope we all understand these terms, Mixed farming, mixed cropping, crop rotation, and crop selection, as well as varietal improvements. Okay? I hope it's very clear. Can we move on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, sir.
Winnie.
Yes. Perhaps you could just go through it, just an overview.
An overview.
Yeah,
yes,
of
maybe. Okay. The strategies for sustainable agriculture.
Yeah, just the overview of those terms: mixed farming, mixed cropping.
Okay, yeah, mixed farming. Anyone maybe from the students? Mixed farming is where, you know, farming, when you are doing farming, you may be growing crops as well as raising livestock. So sustainable agriculture is trying to promote or encourage that when actually you are doing farming, you do not rely on only one enterprise. Okay? So you have a crop, the cropping enterprise, as well as livestock. Okay? So there are two that are mixed there. And when we come to mixed cropping, this is where you have a lot of different crops on your farm than relying only one crop on your farm. For instance, if you are growing maize, you can also grow maybe sunflower, you can also grow cotton, you can also grow groundnuts, different crops. That is mixed cropping. When it comes to crop rotation is growing different crops from different families on the same piece of land year after year. An example may be this year, maybe you grow a legume on this piece of land. Say this land is named A. Area A, you grow a legume crop. Okay? The following year or the following season, you do not grow a legume again on that piece of land. You grow a different crop. You grow maybe now a crop that belongs to Solanaceae family, or maybe it can be a Graminae family, like a legume, or rather a cereal crop. That is crop rotation. So you are growing different crops on the same piece of land year after year. You are not repeating the same type of crop on the same piece of land. And we'll look at that later on crop rotation. We'll look at the advantages of crop rotation, okay? And how that may be implemented successfully. Then number 4, we have crop selection. Here, when you talk about crop selection, you have to select the type of crops on your farm, one that will benefit your farming business. Crops that, for example, those that will suit your area. You may know that certain crops may not be suitable in some areas. So you choose a crop. To select is to choose. You select a crop that is suited to your area, to your environment. If you are from the northern region, there are crops that may be suitable for the northern region, okay? That may not be suited for the southern region, and vice versa. So you select those crops that are suited for your area. Then lastly, here we are talking about varieties, varietal improvements. Get those varieties of crops that are improved. Yes, of course, you know, later on we'll be talking about those land races and local varieties of crops. But here we are saying sustainable agriculture is trying to use certain strategies so that agriculture is boosted, agriculture is improved by the use of those improved varieties of crops. And when you talk about improved varieties of crops, we are talking about those crops that, for example, they are high yielding, early maturing. Because if a crop is high yielding, then you yourself, you leave something for your, if the crop is, you are going to eat the crop, for example, maize, okay? You have enough for your family, you have enough also to sell because of the high yield that you get from your crops. Then the other thing is that maybe the crop there, the variety is very good. It is drought tolerant. In situations where we may not have enough rains, okay? Even if we have a shortage of rains, the crop will be able to tolerate the deficiency in the moisture in the soils. Crops that may probably may have some kind of tolerance. So you go for such crops, okay, for you to succeed. I hope that is very clear now, Winnie. Thank you. Can I move on?
Yes, yes.
Please, thank you. We have already talked about this, what we mean by environmental health, okay? Okay, now, the other thing is that for us to succeed in sustainable agriculture, there are certain activities that we undertake. And those things, the first one is tillage. So shortly we'll look at each one of these, okay, and try to understand what does it really mean. If we are practicing sustainable agriculture, how do we prepare our land? How do we cultivate our land? Then the other one is soil fertility management. How do we manage soil fertility? Pest, weed, and disease management. Then there is also an aspect of organic farming. What really is organic farming? You know, these days people are very health conscious. They have to check what they eat. Okay, so we'll look at organic farming and what is involved under organic farming. We also look at agroforestry as well as beekeeping. And these are some of the activities that are involved under sustainable agriculture. We also look at what we call sustainable farming methods and practices. The first one is permaculture, which is simply a system that applies those principles that are found in nature to the development of human settlement, allowing humanity to live in harmony with the natural world. So permaculture is designed in such a way that as you practice your agriculture, you do not disturb the natural environment. Okay? You live in harmony with the natural environment. As we noted there, as I was saying, one of the things that is encouraged by sustainable agriculture is biodiversity. What do you do with the forest that you find around your fields? Do you totally remove all the trees there in preparation to cultivate your area? Or do you leave some of the trees there? So permaculture is simply is a design system that applies principles that are found in nature to develop or to the development of human settlements, okay, allowing humanity to live in harmony with the natural world. The second one is biodynamic farming. Okay, so biodynamic farming incorporates ecological and holistic growing practices that are based upon the philosophy of anthroposophy. Farmers are encouraged to manage their farms as one living organism, where cultivated species intertwine and support each other. Yeah, now what we mean by biodynamic farming here? We are saying you may have so many enterprises on the farm, okay? Where you are practicing what we called, you saw in the previous slide there, mixed farming, okay? I've given an example of fish farming here, as well as the poultry farming. Okay, so you are practicing fish farming as well as poultry together. Now, how does this fish farming benefit from your poultry? Yes. And how does the poultry benefit from the fish? Fish may benefit from poultry by feeding. Maybe you get the chicken droppings now and then you throw them in the fish pond where the fish eat some of these poultry droppings. Another example that I may give is a situation where you are raising maybe goats, okay? You are raising cattle on your farm, but you are also growing different crops. Maybe I go back to my favorite example. You are growing maize. How do these two different enterprises help one another? So you have the livestock, which is cattle or goats. How do they benefit from maize? Okay, after you harvest the maize, the maize remains, or the stable that remains there. The maize stems and the husks may be fed to your animals, okay, like cattle, okay? And then the manure that is obtained from livestock, from cattle, you apply in the field. So the crops benefit. So you can see that these actually, somehow they benefit one another. And that is an example, or those are two examples of dynamic farming. Fish farming and poultry, okay? Cattle and the crop or cropping system. The third one is hydroponics and aquaponics. Now, hydroponics and aquaponics is one of the modules, study modules that you are going to undertake soon, okay, in this course. So these are actually innovative farming techniques. Hydroponics and aquaponics are simply innovative farming techniques that involve growing of crops without soil, okay, nourishing the plants through specialized nutrients that are added to water. So actually you are growing the crops in water. Maybe for lack of a better word, I can say water becomes the medium. Growing of these crops. So you don't have to worry much about these big urban agriculture. You know that this time around there's maybe I can use urban areas, and all these people need to be fed. So there's a need actually to localize our food system. That there's a need to grow this food quite even in cities. So how do we really practice urban agriculture? All this has to be considered, okay, so that it is done sustainably. At the end of the day, as we said, sustainable agriculture, one of the things that it does promote, that it requires is human health. So how do we practice urban agriculture in such a way that it does not compromise? The fifth point is agroforestry and food forest, polycultures and crop rotation. I've already talked about crop rotation. Okay, polyculture. What is really involved in polyculture? Under polyculture is different agricultural activities like growing different types of crops. Then number 7, growing land races and local varieties. So sustainable agriculture will also promote and encourage that land races and those local varieties of crops need to be encouraged to be grown. There are certain crop varieties that are traditional. They are not improved varieties, okay? And these can be of different crops. And sustainable agriculture does encourage that these are not lost. Instead, they should be kept. And the only way that these local varieties of crops that they are conserved is through growing them now and then. Conservation of these races or varieties. There should be what you may sometimes term as gene conservation or genetic conservation. Then number 8, we have natural animal raising. How do we raise our animals? Okay, like here in Zambia, there are those, give an example of raising chickens. Okay, there could be 2 systems of raising chickens. The first one is the conventional one, like chickens are housed. They are raised in a house and they are fed sometimes ad libitum, continuously, such that a chicken is ready for the market within 5 to 6 weeks. Okay, that is one way of raising livestock. Not only chickens, you can also raise maybe even cattle, where you fatten them, pigs, and so on and so forth. That is the conventional way, where these animals are fed on a special type of diet. Then there's also a natural way of raising livestock. If you are raising chickens, how do you keep them? The chickens are allowed to, they are not housed, they're not kept in a house, an enclosed house, but probably these chickens, they are under wire and they are allowed to run around, okay, in a natural way, the way they live in nature. Then number 9, we have natural pest management. You know, under conventional agriculture, the commonest way of controlling pests or managing pests and disease is through use of synthetic chemicals. And the use of these synthetic chemicals is quite hazardous, it's dangerous, because some of these chemicals, they have a residual effect and they may affect your health. So they are quite not good to continuously use on your farm. Okay, so sustainable agriculture does encourage the use of natural ways of managing pests and as well as disease on your farm. And lastly, but not the least, in an effort to conserve moisture, sustainable agriculture does encourage mulching, which is simply the cover on the soil through the use of different mulching materials such as grass, dry leaves, plastics, wood shavings, newspapers, etc. Any cover on the soil surface to conserve moisture is encouraged. Not only that, but also when the mulch does decompose, it adds humus to your soil. Then there is also one thing that I want to mention here about cover crops. These cover crops, they are very good, not only in reducing soil erosion, but also they do add nitrogen as well as improving soil fertility when they do decompose. When it comes to weeding, there is manual weeding encouraged, where you have a hoe, you go in the field and you start weeding. Okay, under conventional, you know that we promote the use of, people do promote the use of weed killers. And these weed killers are not good because they do damage to the soil as well as polluting the environment. So thanks so much for the introduction that we just have gone through. Now, I want us to look at conservation tillage. You recall there, I was saying, actually, one of the things that is considered under sustainable agriculture is tillage. So let us look at conservation tillage, unless there's a question. Thank you. Any question there? Any question? Okay, if there's no question, then can we move on to conservation agriculture? Yes, Techno 1. Yes, please. Techno 1. What's your question? Techno 1, I can't hear you. Techno 1, can you unmute your mic? Hello?
Okay. Hello. Are you hearing me? Hello?
Yes. Yes, come. Yeah, I can hear you.
Hearing me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello? Okay, I'm asking like this.
Yes, what's your question?
Okay, I'm asking like this. May you, okay, my question is, may you repeat for me under sustainable agriculture method practices? May you repeat for me? Number 1. Response number 1.
Point number 1, what was point number 1?
Permaculture system.
Point number 1. May you repeat for me? I didn't hear it.
Oh,
Hello?
okay, agricultural systems there. I was talking about permaculture. Yes, I was talking about permaculture there. Point number 1 is permaculture, where I said that.
Okay.
Yes. Hello.
Okay, go on. Hello.
Yes.
Are you getting
Point
me?
number 1 there.
Okay,
let
may you
me
repeat
just,
for me?
yeah, it's permaculture. Are you able to see it now? Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
You are able to see it now?
Hello. Yes, I can see it.
You can see it, eh?
I can see it now.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello?
Welcome.
Okay. Are you able to see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So shall
I'm
we move
able
on
to
to
see
conservation
it.
agriculture
Yes.
now?
Yes. We can do
Okay,
that.
thank you. So I was saying there that one of the practices in sustainable agriculture is tillage.
Welcome.
Okay, are you able to see the screen now under tillage? Yes, Elvis, are you able to see the screen under tillage now?
Yeah, I'm able.
Okay.
How about, okay, part of
shall
the
we
screen?
proceed? So, you are
Part
able
of
to see
the
part
screen
of the
isn't
screen.
clear. No, yeah, part of the screen, there's some, okay, it's somehow objected.
Okay.
Okay, okay, we can see.
You can see now?
Yes.
Are you able to see now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. What about this? Are you able to see?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just saying there that tillage is one of the practices under sustainable agriculture. And basically tillage is simply modification of the soil structure.
Yes.
Okay. When we are doing tillage, we are preparing the soil for planting. Okay. So there are different tools that are used. Victor. Yes, Victor. Yes, Victor. What's your question? Okay, shall we move on? I was saying tillage is a mechanical modification of soil structure. So why is tillage done? It's done in order to prepare the soil for planting. Okay? So these are the objectives of tillage. That is seed bed formation for one plants. Then the other thing is that you probably, the soil may be compacted. Now, what is compaction? What is soil compaction? I hope you got the definition for tillage. Eh? So tillage is a mechanical modification of the soil structure. Okay? Tillage modifies soil structure to a wide range of soil-to interactions. Eh? Now, why do we undertake tillage? You can see in the picture there, someone is driving a tractor and they are busy preparing the land. Victor. Okay. I was just saying there that Victor is not asking his question, though he raised his hand. However, I was simply saying, I was just saying, tillage, there we have one seed bed formation. So you are preparing actually the land for planting. Then the second one is compaction, alleviation. Probably you may have soils that are very hard, and because they are hard, water may not actually sink in properly, and there may be, maybe there is a poor drainage there. Okay, that is related to point number 3. The other one is, the fourth one is severing or desiccation of weeds. You want to remove the weeds before you plant, because we know that actually weeds are quite dangerous, because they compete with the plants for space, for water, for nutrients, for sunlight. So we have to remove these weeds so that you only have the crop so that it grows very well. The other one is, maybe you have had grown some legume crops and you want to bring them back or to take them back into the soil. Maybe you want them to act as green manure so that when they decompose, these crops will be able to provide nutrients to your crops. Of course, in the soil, we also have living organisms. And when you cultivate your soil, you will improve or stimulate the activity of these soil living organisms. Sometimes cultivation also may be done when one wants to harvest, like root crop. Maybe you are harvesting Irish potatoes, okay? So you can move in there and cultivate the soil or till the soil. By so doing, you are going to unearth these tubers of potatoes. Now, under tillage, we have what we call conservation tillage. What is conservation tillage? It is simply a method of soil cultivation that leaves the previous year's crop residue on the fields before and after planting the next crop to reduce soil erosion or runoff, as well as other benefits such as carbon sequestration. What are we saying here? This is according to MDA 2011. Conservation agriculture or conservation tillage is a method of cultivating the soil that leaves the previous year's crop residue on the surface of the soil. So when we are practicing conservation agriculture, we do not remove the crop residues from the previous crop. You can see the first picture here. We have some man with a hoe there. Okay, there's some maize stalks remaining in the field. He didn't burn them, he didn't remove. You can see a lot of dry vegetation there. Similarly, on the other side, you can see there are 3 people there. They are cultivating. They're using a reaper. Okay? They have not removed the crop remains there from the previous crop, but instead they have just left them there. And that is what we call conservation tillage. You are conserving something. So conservation tillage is a type of tillage that does not remove the previous year's crop, but instead it leaves it there. Okay? As we move on, maybe to be clearer to you. Now, what are the advantages of conservation tillage? It gives good yields, improves water infiltration, increases organic matter in the soil. Yes. You see, one thing that I should have mentioned is that when we are practicing conservation tillage, what happens is that you only open the soil where you want to plant the crop. And as such, there where you have opened the soil, water is going to collect. And water will be concentrated, as we have said, as we have seen here. Water will be more concentrated where the tillage has taken place, where the reaping has taken place. Okay? So thereby improving what we may call water infiltration. It also does increase organic matter in the soil because you have left the material or the vegetation or the organic material from the previous crop in the field. You did not burn it, you did not remove it and throw it away, but you have left it there to decompose, thereby improving organic matter. It also saves time. Remember, we have said under conservation tillage, you only open the soil where you want to plant, mainly. There are different types of conservation tillage, of course, as we shall see shortly. But mainly, you open the soil only where you are going to sow your seed. And that saves time. Instead of you cultivating the whole area or tilling the whole area, every square meter is not tilled, but only where you want to plant your seed. That is where you open the soil. And that saves time. Okay? Maybe before I go any further, not only saving time, but also saves labor. Also saves power. It is very economical. It reduces expenses on fuel and repair of machinery from wear and tear. It reduces soil erosion. It also does improve biodiversity. I was just talking about types of conservation tillage. There's something that we call zero tillage. Okay, on your left there, you can see that picture there, okay? And you see here what is happening. The soil has only been opened and planted where only on strips, okay? You can see where the green crops are growing there. The other areas are brown. So the areas where it's green, those are the areas where it was opened and the crop was planted. All these other areas were left undisturbed. Eventually, you notice that these undisturbed areas where there is grass or there is vegetation there that is brown, this vegetation is going to decompose and add humus to the soil. And this is zero tillage. Then the other one is mulch tillage, the second one. The third one is tine tillage. This is a specialized type of implement that is used for this type of tillage. Okay, you can see there are small tines there that actually rip into the soil. They begin to rip into the soil and cut into the soil. where planting will take place. Okay, here I have two types of tillage here. Okay, this is the fourth one. We say is minimum tillage or reduced tillage. Now, what is the difference here? What happens under minimum tillage or reduced tillage is more or less like conventional tillage. But the difference is that under minimum tillage, some of the operations that are done under conventional tillage, like harrowing, after plowing the soil or plowing the land, okay, there's no harrowing, okay? That is minimum tillage or reduced tillage. Some of the operations are left out. Any question under types of conservation tillage? Basically, we have talked about four. There's minimum tillage here, there's time tillage, mulch tillage, as well as zero tillage. From the literature that you may have been advised, we shall give you some notes, which we'll be taking. We'll be posting the notes to you so that you can have your own notes. These are simply short notes because of the slide presentation, but we shall give you some notes. So you don't have to worry much that you may have missed some points. We shall give you detailed notes, okay? So just be happy because you have full notes. So if there's no question under types of conservation tillage, allow me to move on to what we call basin making. I don't know whether in Kenya there or in Congo you practice basin making. Basin making is one of the conservation tillage techniques that is practiced here in Zambia, where you use what they call a chaka hole. I don't know in Kenya there. Do you practice basin making? Do you make basins before you plant your crops? Anyone? So maybe if there's no question on basin making, allow me to proceed. So basin making, yes, Helen Mary.
I haven't seen it.
Sorry, I can't get you clearly. Please speak up a bit.
In my area, I have seen it.
Come up again, I can't get you.
Basin.
Okay, that's fine. I did not get you clearly, but just allow me to proceed then. Just allow me to proceed since I didn't get you clearly. Maybe as we discuss, it will be much clearer to you. Okay, so basin making, I will say, is just one of these conservation tillage practices where you use a chaka hole. Okay, and you only open the area where you want to plant. Okay, on the slide here, I have a few requirements that you may need. You may need to have for your basin making. The first one, you need a hole. Then you need some pegs. Okay. You also need some fertilizer cups and some manure cups. So you need a hole, some pegs, fertilizer cups, manure cups, as well as a rope. Okay. Now, these are some of the requirements that you need. But how do you go about making basins? There are different procedures that you need to follow. Okay. Remember, I was saying you need some pegs and some ropes. So what you do is that at the end of each rope, you tie a peg or a stick. Okay, and you stretch it across the field. And then after stretching it across the field, that rope, you firm it in the ground using those pegs. Remember, at that point, the pegs are already tied to that rope. So you stretch the rope across the field. Okay, and you put the pegs in the ground, in the soil. And then, depending on the crop that you are planting, you make some marks along that stretched rope. Okay, for instance, you are planting maize, and the spacing between plants of maize is 30 centimeters. So you make some marks, some markers, okay, which are 30 centimeters between each other on that rope. And then from there, you start making your basins. Okay. And these markers may be in the form of maybe small bottle tops, or you may even tie a knot. So you dig a rectangular basin. In some books or some places, they may just tell you, no, you dig maybe 15 centimeters wide, and the length of that hole may be 30 centimeters, and the depth may be 30 centimeters again. So, or maybe even 15 centimeters, depending on the crop that you're going to plant. In some places, you may find that they may even encourage you to make quite bigger basins. Maybe 45 meters by 45 centimeters by 45 centimeters by 45 centimeters. Okay, so you're having a square type of a basin, 45 centimeters wide, 45 centimeters deep, okay, and 45 centimeters long. Jane Mary.
Hello, sir.
Hello? Hello. You have a question? You didn't get me?
Hello? Share your screen.
Sorry?
Let me share your screen.
Okay.
Hello, sir.
The screen is shared.
I can't see anything on the screen.
Are you able to see me now? Okay, are you able to see me now? Are you able to see me now? Hello? Okay, good. Are you able to see the screen clearly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello? Hello? Hello, sir. Hello? Hello? Yes, please. Yes.
It's now shared, sir.
There's no sharing.
There's no problem.
Are you able to see now?
Yeah, and the problem is,
Are you able to see the screen now that I'm sharing?
I can see it, but sir,
Yes.
a lot of space. So I cannot get you clearly.
No, I cannot get you. Hello, sir.
May you the ones making noise, sir, please, because I can't get you well.
Hello?
I will request you.
Okay. Hello?
Hello.
Yes, are you able to see me now? I was just saying that after you have prepared your basin, I hope it's very clear to everyone.
Clear though, but a lot of echo from background.
Sorry?
A lot of echo
Yes,
from.
you are clear.
Okay, some other, maybe you need to mute your mics.
Dr. Cleto.
You need to mute your mics. That is why there's that noise. You need to mute your mics. Okay, you need to mute your mics. Is that better now? Okay.
Yes, we can get you.
Okay, good. I was simply saying, after you have prepared the basin, basins are of different sizes, depending on the crop that you are going to plant. But the procedure, even if the size of the basin may differ, the procedure is just the same. After you have prepared your basin, now you decide when to plant. There are simply very few and very simple guidelines. Okay? You plant your seeds during rain. Before you plant the seed, what you do is in the basin. Remember, I was talking about the need for fertilizer, a fertilizer cup, also a manure cup. So you get a handful or 2 handfuls. Okay? You get a handful or 2 handfuls of manure, can be crop manure. You put in each basin. And then from there, you can also get a bottle top full of fertilizer. For example, compound D. You put in that basin. And then you cover it with the topsoil that you have dug out from the basin. Okay? Then after you have done that, you cover it thinly so that you cover the manure and the fertilizer. Then you plant your seed. The idea of covering the fertilizer and the manure with a bit of soil is that you do not want the fertilizer to be in contact with the seed that you are planting, in case there is killing of the seed from the fertilizer. So after you have planted your seed, then again you cover the seed with a bit of soil. You do not fill the whole basin with soil. Hello? There's someone playing music in the background there. Can you turn off? Okay, good. Yes. So I was saying, after you have planted your seed, you cover the seed with a bit of soil. For example, if you are planting maize, okay, how many seeds do you put per basin? You put 4 seeds per basin. So 1 seed in each corner, and then you cover with a little soil. Do not fill the basin up to the top. No, you leave some space so that when the rains come, some water will collect in the basin. So this is what I was saying here. You can see there are different crops. Look, if you looked at my screen there, I hope you are able to see it. How many seeds to be put per basin? I was just talking about maize there. Number of seeds, the crop, then the second column, we have number of seeds per basin. You can put 2 to 4 seeds. Okay, and you plant it at the depth of 2.5 centimeters. So different crops, you have different number of seeds to be put per basin and the planting depth. Thank you very, very much. End of presentation. Do you have any questions?
Me have some question, please.
Yes, please. Welcome.
Do you hear me?
Yes, I can get you. Thank you. Yes, I can get you. Yes.
Hello.
Yes, please go ahead with your question.
I don't catch you very well about the second point.
Which point? Maybe just remind me. I was talking about making basins. I was simply looking at different types of conservation tillage. We looked at those 4 types of conservation tillage, okay? And then later on we talked about basin making. What you need to have when you are making basin. So is your question on basin making or on what? Okay. You can ask your question now.
Just about the basin. Yeah, I understand what you're talking. Okay, I do understand.
You don't understand basin making?
I do understand. Yes, of course.
Yes, but what is your question?
No, I'd like to know about the important of I want to know.
Sorry?
Yeah, in Congo, the connection is not so.
Okay. It's now break time. Maybe when we come back, we'll look at, I want us to look at good agricultural practices. Okay?
Okay.
Yeah. You can rest for a while. Since we started quite late, you can rest for 30 minutes. And then from there you come back, we continue with our lesson. So when you come back, we'll be looking at good agricultural practices. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you too.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, hello.
Yes, you are most welcome. So please, before I go any further, I would ask everyone to mute their mics. Before we start the second class, I would request everyone to mute their mics, please. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Yes, I would ask everyone to mute their mics before I start. Otherwise, I'm not going to start. Neil Ray, Winnie Martin, can you mute your mic, please? Okay. We can start now, eh? Okay, we can start now. Okay, I hope everyone is ready. Okay, there are 8 students there, so we can start. Leo Ray. Can you mute your mic, please? Winnie Martin.
Yes.
Can you mute your mic, please? Martin. Martin. Can you mute your mic, please?
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm not going to start the class. Okay, thank you. So we can start, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as I was saying this afternoon, we start a new topic or a new module, good agricultural practices, that is AE 106. I can see Martin. Martin. Martin, I request you to mute your mic, please. Martin. Otherwise, I'm not going to start the class. Martin, can you mute your mic, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Martin. Martin, can you hear me?
Yes.
Martin, can you mute your mic? Okay, so yes, I was saying this afternoon we start looking at a new course, a new module, AE 106, good agricultural practices. Okay, this morning I really enjoyed the class that we had, though there are some students that were having their mics on throughout, and that disrupted the class. I think with the remaining classes, I will not be allowing anyone to have their mics on unless you want to ask or you want a clarification. Is that clear? Anyone whose mic will be on will be sent away from the class. Is that clear? I think that is very, very clear. So shall we start? So due to the increasing concern that really consumers and retailers have about food safety, how food is produced and how it is handled within the supply chain, there's a need to think or rethink how agriculture is being handled and how it is done. Because of this rethinking, people are concerned about their health. This morning, when we are talking about sustainable agriculture, we did talk about people's health, the general welfare of an individual. And now, as we look at these good agricultural practices, you will see sometimes these courses or these modules that we are looking at, they may be related in one or another. So when we are looking at good agricultural practices, we are looking at really those things, those practices that are involved in agriculture that are good, that promote good practices, so to say. When this is followed by the producers, the farmers, the farmers, then you find that your agricultural system is going to be clean. And therefore, there is the rethinking, this rethinking of these agricultural practices so that we have clean agriculture is what brings about good agricultural practices. Okay? Okay, then when we talk about good agricultural practices or GAP, G-A-P, what is it then? GAP or GAP stands for Good Agricultural Practices. And these are those things that one does in the field. Whatever you do in the field, okay? You remember we are talking about, this morning we are talking about tillage, conservation tillage, okay? Then we talked about the application of manure, crop manure, farmyard manure, application of fertilizer. So all those things that one does in the field. After the food has been produced, there's the transportation of this food probably to the consumer. Okay, so all those things that a farmer does from the production of the crop or raising of livestock, the whole process up to the transportation of that food that has been produced to the farmer, that will prevent contamination. And if contamination occurs, how that contamination can be prevented from spreading. Those are what we call good agricultural practices. So maybe in simple terms, when we say we are talking about good agricultural practices, we are talking about those things that are done in the field. During transportation up to the consumer or the market. Those things that will prevent contamination. And if contamination happens, then what should be done? Just think of maybe contamination by microorganisms, such as bacteria, viruses, or fungi. When food is produced, if you produce maybe a vegetable in your garden, as you produce that vegetable, there are microorganisms there. There's bacteria, viruses, and fungi, and so on and so forth, that may cause a disease or may contaminate that vegetable. There are chemicals that are being used there. There are different physical hazards that will contaminate the food. So the good agricultural practices will involve the adoption and application of those good management practices for the production of a wholesome and safe agricultural product for human consumption without affecting the health of the environment, also the health of the farm workers. Now, why is there so much interest in good agricultural practices. Yes, indeed, there's so much interest that has been placed in good agricultural practices because of so many illnesses, sicknesses that are there in our world today that result from food contamination. You know, each and every day we eat food. Have we ever asked ourselves where that food comes from? Or maybe, have we ever asked ourselves how that food is handled? Imagine, when food is produced, first is produced in the field. How is it produced in the field? From how many chemicals have been applied to that crop to grow? If you are rearing chickens, okay, what type of feed has been given to those chickens? And then from there, when those crops or the livestock is ready for the market, you handle it, you prepare it, you process it. How many people handle that food? Okay, and then from there, when that produce, the agricultural produce, goes to the market, it is there before it reaches the consumer. It goes, you are a supplier, you supply to the retailer, you give it to the retailer. Okay, how many people actually do handle that produce at that retail level? Maybe it could be shopkeepers, could be marketeers that handle that. Okay, and during that process, there's contamination. There may be contamination from the food. You yourself, you may contaminate that food with different organisms. Okay, the retailer himself or herself may contaminate that produce with different organisms that cause disease to humans. And when the consumer buys that food, he takes it to his home or her home. How many people, how many hands will touch that food? So here on the screen, I hope you are able to see the screen. Is everyone able to see the screen?
No.
Ah.
I'm not
thought
able
you
to
are
see
able
it.
to see the screen. Yes? Is there anyone able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Jane Mary, you are able
No,
to
no.
see the screen fully? Are you able to see the screen fully?
No, no.
No, Ray, you are not able to see the screen fully. However, other students are able to see the screen fully. Maybe there's something that you need to do with your gadget there. Okay, those that are able to see the screen. Okay, so there are some organisms. I've decided to give examples of certain organisms that cause disease here. The first one, we have E. coli, we have L. monocytogenes, we have Salmonella, we have Shigella, we have Vibrio cholerae, Bacillus cereus, hepatitis A, Cyclospora, and Cryptosporidium. All these are some of the organisms that may contaminate the food. Okay, are you able to see the table now? Here we have a table that shows some infections in the US between the year 2001 and 2010. These infections were as a result of food contaminations. You can see on the left-hand side, the first column there, we have the food types. Then we have the outbreaks, illnesses, and then the pathogens here. Pathogen 1 and pathogen 2. So this table simply illustrates or shows that actually from the food, there are some pathogens, organisms that contaminate the food, and these pathogens are able to cause illnesses or disease onto the handlers or human beings that eat this food. I hope this is very clear. The table is very clear. Okay, you can see the outbreaks here. We had, they had 539, 36, and then the illnesses were 21,264. This is just a simple illustration to show that actually the food that is handled there, and you can see these, they come from the garden, okay? These vegetables, okay? And they were contaminated by these different pathogens, and they were able to cause diseases, illnesses. Is that clear? So we move on. Ray, are you able to see the screen now?
No, I can only see the pictures of us, but not able to see the illustration.
Okay, is there anyone who is able to see?
Hello, sir.
Yes, Winnie, are you able to see the screen?
Perhaps what you can do, perhaps what he has done, he should check the buttons below the screen of his phone. He should click the second button for him to see the screen.
Okay,
there are some buttons below
so Ray, you are able to, I hope you are able to do that. And Winnie, are you able to see the screen yourself?
Yeah, for me I can see, but then if you click the next button, you'll see people instead of the screen. So maybe you should come backward so that he can see the screen.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I hope he's able to hear you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So shall we move on? So here I was just saying, actually, this is just an illustration of vegetables that were handled, and these vegetables, they were contaminated by different disease-causing organisms. And due to that contamination, these vegetables, when eaten, were able, or rather, they caused some illnesses to so many people. So shall we move on? So it is observed that the fewer the food handlers along the food chain, okay, the less the risk of contamination. I think we all agree. Just imagine if you yourself, you are growing maybe some lettuce or cabbage or some vegetable in your garden, okay? And then you have dirty hands. And probably along the line, there are some other people also with dirty hands that will handle that food. Okay, so we have 10 people handling that food. And we have another situation here, okay, where by maybe only 3 people handle the food. Where do you think there will be a lot of contamination? Anyone? Where do you think there will be a lot of contamination on that food? Where there is a lot of people handling the food, or where there are few people handling the food? Winnie?
Where there's a lot of people handling the food, there will be high risk of contamination.
Correct. Yes, that is very correct. You can see here on the diagram here, okay? You can see there's a green circle there, where we have animal crop production, and then we have the consumer, okay? And on the right-hand side, we have the slaughter or the harvest. So here we have only 3 people that handle the food. There is the one that grows or produces the food, okay? Then the one that harvests and the consumer. So the one that harvests sells direct to the consumer. Do you see this? Okay?
Yes.
So, but if we are to further look, there are so many people that handle this food. And as such, because of the many hands that handle the food here, you can see from slaughter, okay? From slaughter after the animal has been slaughtered or the crop has been produced, okay? There's distribution here. After that, there is primary processing, distribution, retail, and consumer. So many people here. Okay, so you can see that the short food chains, the shorter the food chain, or the shorter the handling process, the fewer the hands that handle the food, the less contamination is there. I think we have agreed, like what Winnie has just said there. The fewer the people that handle the food, the less the contamination. Okay? And
Yes.
since we are looking at this good agricultural practices, these are some of the things that we need to understand. Who really handles the food along that the food supply chain? Okay? If you know who handles the food, then you may be able to tell or to try to lessen contamination. Okay? Now, we are saying, look, there's another illustration here. And why are we talking about these good agricultural practices and so on? As I said earlier on, is that there's a growing concern. People are concerned about their health. Okay? Because if the food is not properly handled from production up to the consumer, then it is going to be contaminated. And there are so many disease-causing organisms, as we have seen there, that will bring about illnesses and disease to human beings. Okay. And some of these organisms, they are quite dangerous. Okay. They can kill human beings. Probably you have heard of cholera before. Okay. And I was just showing you here. This Vibrio cholera. This is an organism that causes cholera. Vibrio cholera. It causes cholera. You understand? So just imagine if there is that contamination of the food, how many people will be sick along the supply chain or food chain? So long food chains, if they are long food chains, the longer the food chain, the higher the number of links. Okay? And therefore, the higher the risk of cross-contamination. Opportunistic behaviors, fraudsters, cheating, higher number of actors. So what are we saying? The longer the food chain, the more the handlers of this agricultural produce, the higher the number of links and the higher the risk of cross-contamination. And of course, on the other side, if you look at these diagrams, on the right-hand side, okay, the shorter the food chain, the lower the number of links and the lower the risk of cross-contamination. Any questions so far? Do you have any question? Is everything clear so far?
Yes.
Good, Ray. Are you able now to see the screen, Ray?
I'm at partner.
You are T?
We are together now. I cannot.
Good man. Okay. Vincent. Yes. Kindly mute your mic unless you want to say something. Thank you. Now, due to pressure from consumers to producers to produce good food, farmers are increasingly required to use production methods that reduce the impact of agricultural practices on the environment. Okay? Remember, I just told you that actually, when we are talking about good agricultural practices, now and then you find that you will be referring to some other modules like sustainable agriculture. Okay, you remember this morning we talked about the impact of agricultural practices on the environment, that we have to have a healthy environment for us to be able to produce good food or good crops or rare livestock in a very good conducive environment. So there is a pressure. The consumers, they want quality, good and quality farm produce. And if you as a farmer, you produce good crops, you as a farmer, you produce quality livestock, then your produce will give you good returns. You have a lot of money, you'll be able to sell your crop at a very high price. So the higher the price, the more money you get to yourself. That is why actually now we are saying, no, as farmers, as you delve into training yourselves into agriculture, from the onset, from the beginning, make sure that you know what are good practices and why those good practices are very, very important to you as a farmer. So there's a pressure. These farmers are always faced with the pressure, okay? That they have to reduce the use of agrochemicals. There are some agricultural chemicals, for instance, those that help to control disease on our crops. There are also those that help to control disease on our livestock. There are those chemicals that are used to control pests. Some of these chemicals take time to degrade, okay? They take long to degrade, and as such, they have what we call residual effect. And some of these residual effects, they are quite harmful to human health. So here is a consumer, and knowingly goes to the market or goes to a shop or supermarket, or whatever it is, buys the food that is contaminated. He doesn't know that this food is contaminated, or this food has a residual effect of some agricultural chemicals. They buy the food, they take it home, and they eat. Then, consequently, that is going to affect their health in the long run. So, farmers are now again reminded to follow certain practices that are good, okay, so that they can minimize. Ray, kindly mute your mic. Equally, Martin, please, thank you. Okay. The other thing that is there is that farmers are encouraged to efficiently use natural resources, the use of water, the use of the land itself. Kennedy, kindly mute your mic, please. Thank you. Then the other thing that is also reminded here is to safeguard the welfare of workers and conserving farm ecology. Now, maybe before we go any further, what is it that we are talking about here when we are saying safeguarding the welfare of workers? Okay, if a farmer has workers, what is the environment in which these farmers work? Are they safe? Do they have, for example, protective clothing? Maybe do they have gumboots? Do they have work suits? Do they have gloves? If the type of work that they do requires wearing gloves. So the farmer or a farmer has to safeguard the welfare of these workers. Are they working in a very good environment? Are they provided with protective clothing? Then the other thing is biodiversity. I talked about biodiversity this morning when we are looking at sustainable agriculture. How is the farm ecology conserved? Certain things that are occurring, certain things that are available are there on the farm. Natural things, for example, the forests around your farm, how are they being treated? Now, what is the concept of GAP? You have to sleep with this always. GAP stands for Good Agricultural Practices, okay? Good Agricultural Practices, GAP. So, basically, there are two issues that GAP wants to address. One, ensuring that there is food safety and other agricultural products during on-farm and post-production processes. So the bottom line here is food safety, minimization of contamination, okay, onto these foods. Then the second issue that GAP wishes to address is environmental sustainability. This morning we are talking about sustainable agriculture, where we said that actually sustainable agriculture is that type of agriculture that tends to maintain productivity, okay, without disturbing the environment. So here we are seeing once again that these good agriculture practices want to address certain issues of enhancing or improving the environment without actually causing harm to this environment, so that there is a continued farm operations. The other thing that we should not forget is that, as we said this morning, is that human beings are very, very important. The welfare of human beings. So this GAP, or good agriculture practices, is making sure that actually human beings, the handlers or the producers, are not left behind, that there should be socio-economic sustainability on the farm. The development and adoption of GAP has become increasingly important in the light of the following. Why are we saying that actually the development and adoption of GAP is very, very important? Why? Because of a trade that does occur between regions and the countries. There's now what we call global trade. People trade. For example, here where I am in Zambia, okay, we may produce a lot of food. Maybe we produce a lot of maize, and maybe there, that side, you may not have a lot of maize, and we trade with you. Okay, buy the maize from here to that place, or vice versa. Okay, now, if what the produce that we are buying from you is contaminated, then you're not going to buy. You have your own standards, we have our own standards. There should be standards, by the way, here, that the food that is being sold or traded should be of good quality and not contaminated. So because of that increasing regional and international trade in food and other agricultural products, there's the need to develop and adopt GAP standards. There is also a growing consciousness of consumers of the quality, safety, and hygiene of the products they buy. We do believe that each and every person wants to buy something that is of good quality. Just think, you go to a market, you want to buy maybe some bananas. You want to buy some bananas, and maybe you find that the bananas there are maybe overripe and they are rotten. Okay, it might be very difficult for you to buy those rotting bananas. You'll want to buy good quality bananas, right?
Yes.
Yes, and probably the bananas that you buy, they are you hope that they are not contaminated. Okay, and maybe the seller, the one who is selling, the marketeer there, is very clean. Okay, just imagine you go to buy bananas, you will find that these bananas, they are of good quality, right? But the one who is selling the bananas is very dirty. The clothes, they are very dirty. Even the hands, they are very dirty. Okay, are you going to buy from that individual? No, you might not buy from that individual, isn't it? You go to buy maybe from the person who looks very clean. Eh? So there is growing consciousness from us, the consumers, okay, that we want to get this quality food that is safe and from a very hygienic environment. You see, I was just talking about certain, standards that have to be there. You as an agriculture producer, you have to have standards when you are producing your food. Okay, there are some countries like in Asia and in the Pacific where there's need for farmers, the farmers in those areas, that they have to have certificates that will allow them to sell their produce to certain retailers. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that here is an individual, here is a producer who has a certificate and is going to sell his or her produce to a retailer or a supermarket. They have to have a certificate that will allow them to sell to that individual. Now, how do you get that certificate? You have to be certified that actually on your farmstead, on your farm, you are following good practices, things that will not endanger the lives of the consumer. Is that clear? There's someone there with the...
Clear.
Okay. There's someone there. Ray, kindly
Yes, I'm
mute.
clear.
Yes, you can mute your mic for now. Same applies to Techno F1. You can also mute your mic. Thank you. Ray? Okay, thank you. Ray, I can see your mic is
Yes.
on. Kindly mute your mic, please. Thank you. Yes, so we are saying, I was saying that there are some places like in Asia and in the Pacific where farmers are required to have certificates, okay, for their farms. And these certificates that they have will allow them to sell their produce to retailers, okay, of the high-end markets. That is big retailers, then they fetch a lot of money. Okay, several countries have also developed their own good agriculture practices standards and their own certification system. However, there are many farmers and agriculturists all over the world that have difficulties in understanding the GAP standards that have been set by national authorities, international agencies, and other retailers. So that is difficult, actually. People want to practice agriculture the way they have been doing it. Okay. So look at this. Traditional farmers say, we have always produced food this way. What is wrong now? While conventional farmers say, we are achieving high yields in our food production. What is wrong with our approach? So there's a debate there. People, maybe they have lived the way they have lived. They do not want to change and learn the new. They want to continue doing what they've been doing before. And that's what some farmers in different parts of the world may be facing at the moment. But good agriculture practices do require that we change, that we convert and follow those guidelines that will be very helpful. But now, what is the point? What is the point? What is the point here? Has the food being produced followed the GAP standards? That is the question that we need to ask ourselves. Why do we talk about GAP? As consumption of fresh produce has increased, the number of foodborne diseases, illnesses that are associated with fresh food produce, they also increase. You can see now, if you go to a market, say a green market, where you're going to buy vegetables, there are so many types of vegetables, so many types of vegetables. And with the growing population, the world population, it means that even the consumption itself has increased. Suffice to say that maybe in the few years to come, the world population might go up to 10 billion people. Now, what does that mean? It means that the more people there will be in the world, the more food they will need to buy. And more so, if they buy more food, it means that there is a likelihood that there will be a lot of illnesses that may be associated with the food that they buy, especially if it is fresh food. Now, why is it important to you as a farmer? Some of the things I've already talked about. Okay. I said, when you follow good agriculture practices, then there will be reduced risk of contamination of your produce. That is point number one. That is why it is important. When you are following everything in the way that should be done, then there will be reduced risk of contamination of your produce. Later on, in the other following slides, we'll see what are those things. I'll try to talk about each area of production. For instance, when you are cultivating, when you are growing the crop in the field, how do you really maybe handle manure application, the fertilizer application to the field? Where do you get the manure from? Okay, how is the manure processed? Because if the manure is not processed, that manure is not processed properly, like the crow manure, maybe it's goat manure, cow dung, or pig, or wherever you get your manure from. Okay, that may contaminate the crop that you are growing there. And that poses a risk of sickness to human beings. Then the second point that I want to talk about is quality and shelf life of your produce. If there's less contamination on the produce that you have, you find that such a produce would tend to stay longer without rotting in storage. We go back to bananas. If you have very good bananas that are not contaminated and you want to keep them, maybe for 1 week, you may keep them for 1 week because they are not contaminated. But if they are contaminated, you find that your bananas, within 2 to 3 days, they are rotten. You can think of any other farm produce that is contaminated and one that is not contaminated. Here, what we are saying is that there is a higher likelihood of a shorter shelf life for those farm produce that are contaminated as compared to those that are not contaminated. So the less the contamination of the produce, the longer will be its shelf life. And thereby you are reducing its spoilage. Then the other thing is that there's a greater organization and efficiency of your operations. When one is following these wonderful good practices in agriculture, then you'll be well organized on your farm and you're going to be very efficient in your operations. Then the other thing is that there are some times when you are selling your produce, and as you sell your produce there, probably there may be some risk of illness. Maybe some people may become sick and so on. Those that may have bought from you and eaten your farm produce. Or they may not even become sick, but even before they buy, they may want to know where you produce, who you are, and how you produce your food. So you produce a certificate, you show them, okay, and then they buy from you. But if you are not certified, Vivian, you are not certified, then you might have problems in selling your produce. I hope we are together. I hope we are together. Okay. Can you get me? I hope we are together. Vivian? Okay, if there's no question, then allow me to proceed. So here I want us to look at major areas of potential risk. You see, as you see from number 1 up to site selection up to storage, all these areas are areas of potential risk. And at every stage, any stage here, your produce can be contaminated. Okay? So the first one is site selection, where you pick the area. How is the area that where we want to produce? Hello? Okay?
Yes, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, hello. This is Esparo Liva from Bukavu, South Kivu province.
Yes, please.
Yeah,
your
we
question?
wanted to join. Sorry?
You want to join?
Yeah, I wanted to join.
Okay.
Yeah, I am a teacher for DLI.
Oh, you're a teacher for DLI?
Yeah, a teacher for DLI. We are in Walungu here. We have been with students, but we didn't know the exact time of the meeting.
Okay, actually the meeting is towards the end, sir.
Sorry?
The meeting is coming to an end maybe in the next 10, 20 minutes, sir.
Yeah, in next 20 minutes. Yeah, what is the subject, today's subject?
Today's subject, we are looking at good agricultural practices, sir.
Cultural practices?
Good agricultural practices.
Right, good agricultural practices.
Yes, sir.
Wanasema, yeah, all right. So, okay, the students are no longer here. They have gone away, but we hope on Monday you will have to sit for the new meeting or the new lesson?
Yes, I only meet them on Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Sir, sorry, Doctor. Dr.
Yes, sir.
Continues the class. Tell him to consult the director in Kenya. He's got the program.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, but should I know you, please? Because you have not even introduced yourself. I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
Excuse
I'm
me,
Dr.
sir.
Namoobe.
Excuse me, sir. Please, you are disturbing the class. The class is in session. Let the lecturer continue and get back to Reverend Samson for details, sir. The session is being recorded.
Yeah, thank you.
So you are disturbing, sir. Sorry about that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. I'm sorry for that. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So I was just saying there, I was talking about major areas of risk. Okay. Here I've given a list of production profile here that actually when one is producing anything, a crop, okay? Or yeah, basically crops, yeah, the profile talks about producing crops from site selection to storage there, okay? Each and every area here is has a potential risk. From site selection, where are you going to grow your crop? Is the area polluted? Okay. What is the surrounding area looking like? Then the other one is, how do you prepare the soil or the land? What are the type of varieties that you are going to grow there? Planting, nutrition, irrigation, pest control, disease control, weed control, harvesting, transportation, and storage. So each one of these areas, there are areas of potential risk for contamination. Now, what are some of the consequences? The failure to adhere to good agricultural practices. What are some of the consequences? If one does not follow those practices that are there, okay? You as a farmer, here you are producing something and you do not follow good agricultural practices. What happened to you? What happened? What will be the consequence?
Lakini haufuate manorma. Donc unarekolte me haufuate manorma za conservation. Hapa kuna fundisho juu ya conservation.
The teacher from Kenya there. The teacher from Kenya, maybe you can mute your mic, please. Thank you. Yes, as you explain, kindly mute your mic. As you explain to that individual who is learning a student there. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course, I have been I've been explaining students because we are with some of the students here. They have been asking what are you saying? You see that I am in Congo, please, and English is not our first language, so I am trying to.
Thank you.
I am in Congo, yeah. So I am trying to interpret, right.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
Asante sana.
Asante sana. Yeah. So I was saying, what are the consequences? I was saying, what are the consequences of not following these good agricultural practices? One of them, the first one, is rejection and confiscation of one's produce. So you see, if you are doing some trade, say international trade, okay, and it is discovered that actually you are not following any good agricultural practices, your produce is going to be rejected, okay? And that produce is going to be confiscated. So what does that mean? It means that you are at loss. You're going to lose everything. You're going to lose your produce, and it's going to be confiscated, and you are not going to get anything out of it. It means that your efforts, they have yielded nothing. You have made a loss. The second consequence is that people may lose confidence in you. The consumers will have no confidence in you. They'll think that you are just a liar, a joker, a cheater, a thief. So they are going to lose confidence in you. The third consequence is that loss of market. No one will be buying from you. And consequently, if there is no one buying from you, then you are going to lose revenue. And for exporters, they are going to lose forex.
Parce que vous mettez sur le marché un produit non viable.
Now, what can be done to avoid these consequences? You remember, we are saying that there are these consequences that we have seen here: rejection and confiscation of farm produce, lack of consumer confidence, loss of market, revenue, and forex. Now, what can you do to avoid that? So these, following are some of the gap elements that we considered in order for us to avoid certain consequences. Okay? And we are going to look at each and every one of those listed here. Each one of them individually. We'll try to explain in a more detailed way. The first one, I said water quality. Then the second is store amendments or application of manure or fertilization, livestock, pets and wildlife, worker health and sanitation, then equipment, tools and buildings. So we start with water quality. Okay, now what is a good practice on water quality if we are to avoid the consequences that may come as a result of not following good agriculture practices? You notice there we are talking about the rejection and confiscation of farm produce, loss of confidence in the producer, loss of revenue, and so on and so forth. So what do you really mean when we talk about water quality? So whenever water comes in contact with the produce, its quality dictates the potential for contamination. What are we saying here? What we are saying here, when we say whenever water comes in contact with produce, its quality dictates the potential for contamination. It means that as soon as water is in contact with whatever you're producing, a crop or livestock or whatever you're producing, it can be contaminated. It is the #1 source of contamination. So water is #1 source of contamination. So water has so many uses: for irrigation, washing the produce, washing hands, washing different surfaces. We use water when we are formulating or diluting herbicides and pesticides, different chemicals that we want to spray on our crops. And also water is used for cooling. Now, irrigation practices. Here, when we talk about irrigation practices, water comes from different sources. The water that we may use for irrigation comes from different sources. Maybe you have what we call surface water. Okay? This surface water may contain pathogens and parasites of humans. Okay? Maybe you find that people may defecate in the water. And probably if there is a fecal matter in the water, that water is of bad quality, because water that has been contaminated by fecal matter, okay, probably that fecal matter has so many pathogens that they may be harmful, okay, to humans. And when that water is used for irrigation, the pathogens will contaminate the crop. Okay, yeah. And then when that crop is used or touched by human beings or eaten by human beings, to cause some sickness or illnesses. Then the other source of water is from deep wells, that is underground water. Okay, and this one is less likely to have pathogens depending on the depth of that well, but may contain pesticides and some heavy metals.
Maji ya faruze unaweza ishota kwa mvula, unaweza enda ishota kwa mtoni, wala unaitosha mpwi. Alors, unaweza itosha mpwi yenye iko sawa.
There are some places where the water that is being used for irrigation is tested for different pathogens in some countries. But like here in many African countries, many farmers, especially these our small scale farmers, they are not able to really test the water for different pathogens and parasites. So here we have a list of different pathogens that are found in water, and these are quite dangerous. They cause disease and illness. Okay? There are so many there, you can just have a look at them. Okay, when I give you some notes, you'll be able to find the time and try to know each and every one of them. So these are pathogens that are found in water and they cause disease. Okay, so here I'm looking at water testing. Okay, water source will determine the possible frequency of testing. So here, as I said already, there are some different sources of water. It can be from maybe municipal council or district water system, can be a closed system that is underground or covered tank, or an open well. Okay? So that will determine how often that water is tested. Also, the water that is found underground or is covered, that is good water, and the testing may not be so often as compared to water that is found in open wells. Then the other thing that I want to talk about is sprinkler irrigation, sometimes known as overhead irrigation. The teacher from Congo.
Yes,
the teacher from Congo.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I'm online, sir. I'm online.
Kindly mute your mic. I hope you are able to get me.
Yes, I am getting you well, sir. Okay, yeah, I am hearing you well.
As you explain to your students, please mute your mic unless you have to talk to me or you want to ask a question.
Yes, I am explaining to my students. Yeah, I am explaining to my students, but they said they have a question. Est-ce que muna ulizo? So yeah, sir, this is the question, sir, from my students.
Yes, please.
Yeah, they say, is it possible, as we are talking just about the quality of water, is it possible to boil? Is it possible to boil water and irrigate with it in order to kill some pathologies?
You know, it's very interesting because imagine you have to boil the water and then from there you cool it, and there's a lot of water that you may need to irrigate. So
yeah, of course, that is what they want to know.
So,
is it
probably the thing is that the thing that is feasible and makes sense is that the irrigation water, you may apply some chemicals that will kill these organisms. You apply a chemical that kills the organisms than you boiling the water.
Very right, sir. Yes. Let me explain them a bit because you see they are not understanding English. Okay. Il dit que au lieu de bouillir cette eau là-bas, il faut plutôt appliquer des produits chimiques yenye unasikia ndani ya maji inaua kwanza ile microbe mbele uende uarose nayo ke kuipiga paske hautapiga quantity yote ya maji yenye utaarose nayo, lakini ukaleta produit chimique.
The teacher from Congo.
Yes, sir.
Kindly mute your mic as you explain to the students.
Yes.
They'll be hearing you. Are you with them or you are not with them?
I am with them just here. I am with them. Yeah, Kate. Yeah, I am with them. Aseme kama
Kindly mute your
No.
mic if you are with them.
It is a technical problem that I am having. I am now following simply audio. I am not connected to the video.
Okay. But I'm kindly asking you to mute your mic so that you explain to them since you are with them, so that the class can continue without disturbance from you. Thank you.
Oh, right. Yeah, thank you, right. Yeah, I understand.
Because as I try to explain, you are also explaining there, I cannot communicate to the other students.
All right. So what should I do?
You turn off your mic.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Switch off your mic.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Thank you. So, yes, I was saying that overhead irrigation, that is sprinkler irrigation, is more likely to spread contamination above ground plants than root zone irrigation. So, what I will say, there are different types of irrigation systems here. Okay, there is what we call surface irrigation and overhead irrigation. And under surface irrigation, we have furrow irrigation. We also have flood irrigation and drip irrigation. We also have the overhead irrigation that we call sometimes sprinkler irrigation. So we are saying that this type of irrigation is more likely to spread contamination to above ground plant parts because water is thrown onto the foliage of the plant. The second thing, other than just water that we talked about, is soil amendments. That is application of manure. The practices of using animal manure or chicken litter should be managed closely to minimize potential microbial contamination of fresh produce. You see? Amarcia. Amarcia. Amarcia.
Yes.
Kindly turn off your mic, please. Thank you. Yes. I was saying soil amendments, that is application of different fertilizers to the soil to enhance soil fertility, like application of farmyard manure. And here, when you talk about farmyard manure, we are referring to animal manure or crow manure. It may be cattle manure or cow manure. You may talk about goat manure. Sometimes we also talk about chicken manure or chicken litter, and that these should be properly used because they are potential hazard for contamination. Okay, there are so many disease-causing organisms that may be found in this manure. That is why I was saying the manure should be properly treated. Okay. Incompletely composted manure may contain pathogenic bacteria. So if the manure that you apply to your crop is not properly decomposed, that manure may be having some pathogens, and those pathogens may contaminate your produce as you are growing it in the field there. Okay? Then the other thing, as you can see from the pictures here, on the left-hand side, we have someone showing fertilizer, inorganic fertilizer. Okay? These, they have less, or they may not have pathogens in them. Okay? But the problem with these fertilizers is that they may actually destroy the soil in the long run. So what are some of the pathogens that are associated with the manure? we have E. coli, we have also Salmonella. These are some of the organisms or pathogens that are associated or that may be found in manure. So that is why we are saying that the manure that you're going to use in your crops should be properly or fully decomposed before you use it, so that you lessen the contamination of these pathogens onto your crops. Now, how do these survive? Survive of human pathogens in raw manure. Okay, now what is raw manure? Raw manure is that manure that is not fully decomposed. Pathogens have been reported to survive in raw manure for 1 year or even longer. So you see, can you just imagine you are growing a crop maybe for the period of 2 to 3 months, okay? And you are using this raw manure. That is a potential risk of contamination onto the crop. And it only, the organisms that are found in this raw manure may last for 1 year or even longer, and yet your crop is grown over a period of 2 to 3 months. It means that the manure that you have applied there, that has these pathogens, disease-causing pathogens, will contaminate, the pathogens will contaminate the agricultural produce or the vegetables, whatever you're growing there. And these vegetables or the crop that you are growing, that is contaminated already, it will be harvested and sold to the people. It means that as human beings eat this crop that is contaminated, they are also eating the organisms, the pathogens there. And there's a likelihood of them being ill or sick. No one knows precisely how long manure-borne pathogens survive after application in the fields. So where it is not possible to maximize the time between application and harvest, raw manure should be avoided. Now, what are some of the production practices that may be followed in order to reduce risks that are related to raw manure? 1, proper storage of manure. 2, you incorporate the manure in the soil early enough. This will allow the raw manure to decompose, because if you incorporate the manure in the soil much earlier, okay, when it is still fresh or raw, microorganisms will work on that manure, and then it will be fully decomposed by the time you plant your crop, thereby reducing the chances of a contamination from pathogens that may have been in this manure. And as a matter of fact, when the manure is fully decomposed, even those pathogens will be also denatured, they will die. Okay, the target time of application 9 months before harvest. So if you know that this crop is a short duration crop, apply the manure early, or rather apply the fully decomposed manure so that there's no contamination. Then lastly, there is also what we call proper and thorough composting of the manure. Again, we are almost talking about the same thing, that the manure should be properly cooked, should be properly decomposed. Okay, let us now come to livestock, pets and wildlife. How do you handle these in relation probably to fresh produce? A major source of microbial contamination with fresh produce is humans and animal feces. Keep pets, the animals that you keep, domestic animals, chickens and children, out of your fields. Okay? And not only out of your fields, but also when you do harvest and bring your produce home, where do you keep it? Do you keep it safe away from livestock, pets, and the other animals? We have said here that actually humans and animal feces are a major source of microbial contamination. So the children, where do they play from? Or where do they go for defecation? Do they go in the fields where you have your crops there? Remember, I've said that actually the human feces, they are very, very dangerous because they have so many organisms, okay, that may contaminate food. Animal feces are a major source of pathogenic organisms. Since animals are in contact with soil, manure, and water, they can easily pick up these contaminants from these sources. So, all these, how do they blend together? The livestock, the pets, and the animals, and the human beings. Okay? Because here, what we are trying to look at, we are trying to lessen contamination or have zero contamination to our produce so that we have clean produce, quality produce that we'll be proud of at the end of the day. There are some areas where there may be wild animals that maybe one may find difficult to control. We may be able to control maybe our children at home, people, pets, those domesticated livestock or animals, but there are wild animals that just come out from maybe the forests that we may not be able to control so much, but you have to watch out for evidence of their presence in the area. For instance, fencing, scare tactics, depredation, or modification of the surrounding environment, so that actually these animals are kept away from the fields. Another thing that we may talk about is rodents, such as rats. We also talk about birds. So all these are potential sources of contamination, okay? Make sure that your surroundings, the surroundings of your areas where you have your fields is kept clean so that you keep these rodents and birds away. Keep all areas free of garbage, because if you have a lot of garbage, like for rodents, you find that they'll be hiding in that garbage. And probably if they are scavenging or they try to hunt in the night or look for food in the night, they come out in the night from the hiding places, from the garbage, they go in your fields and they start contaminating the food. All the unnecessary equipment may be removed. Old and broken equipment can provide protection for rats and insects, and all this should be cleaned up. Now, the other thing, last but not the least, is worker health and sanitation. What is proper health and sanitation? When you have workers, I told you before that the workers are the people that are going to handle this food. They are the ones that are going to handle the produce. Are they sick? What is their physical health? Are they sick? If they are sick, what is their sickness? Is it something that can be transmitted? Is it transmittable? Do they have open wounds? You see, when you have these workers, maybe they have been harvesting your crops, maybe vegetables from your garden, and maybe they have wounds, open wounds. Okay, maybe those wounds are contaminated by different pathogens, and they're handling this food. Consequently, the pathogens from these workers will be transmitted or transferred onto the produce that they're handling. Proper hand washing for everyone who touches food.
there are some times when I've seen some commercial farms that are run by white people. What they do is that if they're harvesting on that particular day, everyone's hands are sanitized. Okay, you know what we mean by sanitizing. In this event of COVID-19, you hear of people saying, no, wash your hands. Okay, hand sanitize. Why are we doing that? Why are we taught to do that? So that we kill every organism that may be on our hands. So there are some farms where the workers' hands are washed before they touch any farm produce, before they harvest, before they grade. They wash their hands, they sanitize their hands so that these hands are clean. Of course, there are some situations where some workers may be required to wear gloves so that they do not have direct contact onto the produce. And lastly, there's what we call proper produce handling procedures. These should be well streamlined. So the major source of human pathogens are workers' hands. So the single most effective public health measure to prevent disease outbreak is proper hand washing. There are no two ways about it. And as I have said, you have heard several times during this COVID era, we are talking about wash your hands regularly. Wash your hands regularly. And that is the sure way of preventing disease outbreak. So similarly, when the workers wash their hands, then they properly wash their hands with different, maybe detergents or chemicals or whatever they may use that will be able to kill these organisms. That is a sure way of preventing the spread of disease, hand washing. Then the other one is employee sanitary facilities. Number, conditions, and the positioning of field toilets. Okay, in the field where you are growing your crops, are there any toilets there? If the answer is yes, how many are they? You may talk about the number. Yes, you may have maybe 2, 3, 10, whatever number you may want to talk about. But the condition of those toilets is also is of paramount importance. What is the condition? Is there water inside the toilets? Or are they clean, or they are contaminated, or they are smelling throughout? Okay, what is their position? Which direction of the field are they located? That is also very, very important, because the position itself may determine contamination onto the produce. Maybe those, if the toilets are located where the wind blows from, okay, there are some pathogens that can be blown onto the fields. These toilets, sanitary facilities, should they be cleaned in the field? Are hand washing facilities available there near the toilets or these sanitary facilities? So we have already talked about this, that proper hand washing is the best method of reducing contamination. Probably the number one source of foodborne illness is unsanitary worker conditions. Here we are just explaining how to wash hands properly. Okay, this is very simple, and I'm sure so many, as I was saying, so many talk has been given on how to properly wash your hands, especially this time when there's COVID there. So I think all of us, we know how to properly wash the hands so that there's no contamination at all. Now, when should you wash your hands? Before beginning work. Make sure that the workers wash their hands. Remember, we are talking about good agriculture practices. And good agriculture practices are those practices that will lessen, reduce, minimize, or eliminate food contamination. Because there's a concern here that this food that is produced by these farmers may be contaminated. And if this food is contaminated by different disease-causing pathogens or organisms, then the food, once consumed, it will cause illness, sickness, and probably death. So here we are trying to eliminate that. And we are saying, by following good practices, then we are going to eliminate that. We are going to reduce that. So we are saying before, when should you wash your hands? Before you begin work. Or when should your workers clean their hands? Before beginning work. After each rest room visit. What is a rest room? A rest room here is a toilet or a sanitary facility. When you are coming from the toilet, you wash your hands. Before and after eating, smoking, and any other breaks. After other activities, anytime the hands become dirty. So these are what are we saying? What we are simply saying here is that make sure that your hands are clean throughout, so that in that way you lessen contamination. Now let us come to the last one, equipment, tools, and buildings. Most things are to prevent spreading of contamination. Make sure that the equipment that you are using there, the tools, and even the buildings from where you work, they are clean. The equipment should be washed, rinsed, and sanitized. Everything should be clean. Make sure that they are not contaminated. So here we are simply looking at the proper cleaning, how you clean, because there is improper cleaning whereby probably there are no detergents used, the cleaning itself is not properly done. Okay, so it means that if the cleaning is not properly done, the organisms that may contaminate the food items or the farm produce will not die. And consequently, these will be transferred onto the humans. Okay, here I have a picture. You can see someone that has been harvesting green pepper there. He's wearing gloves so that there's no contamination onto the vegetables that he has put in a bucket there. And lastly, but not the least, is harvest sanitation. When you have harvested, what do you do?
When you have wakati ushavuna sasa unafanya nini? Ile ilikuwa list ya
so that you lessen contamination.
Sasa ukishavuna
avoid contact between fruits, vegetables, beans, etc. and the soil. Do not stack a container on top of the other.
Ah, très bien. Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Faut éviter que les produits
avoid bruising or cutting of fruits and vegetables, so that there's no internal contamination. Do not use an open water source for food washing. Use running well and sit water. Because here, when you are, after you have harvested, okay, if the type of produce that you have harvested requires washing or cleaning, you have to consider the source of water. Because the water itself
usukule mbele uiweke. Sasa hii
the other thing is to clean, sanitize beans after each use.
Sasa hapa habako nafundisha juu
cover
utoshe wala
containers
uvune
after washing before transportation.
Uvune yenye utagarde utaweka
all those decomposed vegetables from the gardens. they should be removed.
Vegetables may
Do not mix these decomposed vegetables with those vegetables that are not decomposed. Thank you.
Decomposed vegetables.
So we have
Faut
come
pas
to the
mixer,
end of
donc,
our lesson
les
for
légumes
today.
qui peuvent être décomposés,
If
des
there is
légumes
any
qui ne peuvent pas se
question, please,
décomposer.
you
Par exemple,
have about 5
à un certain moment,
to 6
inauza
minutes to ask questions.
wala tomate wala
Thank
nini.
you.
Sasa ya uyoga hawezi biwekea pamoja na maproduits zenye haziwezi oza. Nkomo byama nani ndamenya ibisubira akabola par exemple. Bihole par exemple, ce n'est pas facilement. Hein? Donc ile question préparée tumuulize tumukamati sasa. Est-ce que
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Doc.
In Congo, please, you said that you will have course at 12 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes, please. We'll have soil and water. Yes, the module soil and water. That is AE 107, sir.
AE 107, right? Soil and water. Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
So, what is the time in Congo, please? Where are you exactly right now?
I'm in Zambia, and in Zambia it's
Zambia
4 o'clock.
Zambia is 4 o'clock.
Congo, all the time. Sorry, sir. How are you doing? Great.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes, that is
yeah,
Congo.
I'm okay.
The control system.
I'm okay.
Yes, sir. The control system is in Germany here. So Germany time. Oh, our Congo colleagues are freezing. German time is 12 o'clock. Congo with Germany, Congo 11 o'clock in the morning. Then Kenya, in this case,
it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
I hope he's going to hear that because it's freezing.
Yes, Kenya, they are 1 hour ahead of Zambia and Germany.
Perfect. Yes, sir.
Whereas Congo, they are 1 hour behind.
1 hour behind. So please, Congo, if you can hear us, it's 11 o'clock. But don't worry, we are going to inform the Congo, their director, to give you the table as well, the time, I mean, which was already given. I don't know why it didn't reach you, sir.